up to him and try to trick him. All kinds of interesting stuff happens when Jesus is on the road. So today we have a parable. This is called the parable of the rich fool. Stop, stop, and stop. Okay, now, what's a parable? Earthly story with a heavenly meaning. What's earthly? Economics and finance and stuff. That's earthly, right? Okay? So he's trying to tell us something about what's heaven like and what's the contrast here. Earthly story, heavenly meaning. Okay, let's go to work here. Now, someone in the crowd said to Jesus. Who said it to Jesus? Now again, isn't this interesting? In previous encounters on the road, it's a certain man, a certain village. So it's a general question that I'm sure he got this a lot. Why is that? One of the things they call Jesus is rabbi. Rabbi. Well, what do rabbis do back in 2,000 years ago? 2,000 years ago, rabbis and scribes are experts on the Torah. What's the Torah? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Our Jewish friends do what? They read the Torah every year through, and then at the end of the year they start all over again. They read it over and over again. So the Torah is the law. That's the written law. Is there oral tradition, oral Torah? Yes, there is. So the rabbis and scribes are experts in the written and oral Torah. Now, most of us would be, ignorant peasants back in the day. Can we read and write? No. So what do? If you have a dispute or a problem, you go to the local rabbi or scribe who's in the village, who's an expert in the law, and you say, what do I do about this situation here? And the rabbi or the scribe will make a lawful ruling based on what? The Torah. Where does the Torah come from? God gave Moses the Torah on Mount Sinai. God gives the law. So the standard is God. Okay? So it's not uncommon if someone said, oh, a famous rabbi from Nazareth is coming through town. He's on the road. He's right outside of town here. Let me go up with my perplexing question and see if we can get an answer here. So that's the context. So here's the question from a somebody. Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me. Stop. Well, I'll do it the second line. Jesus says to him, friend, who set you to be judge and arbitrator over you? Now, is that a delicious question that Jesus asked the guy?
Yeah.
Friend, who sent me to be judge and arbitrator over you? What's the answer? God did. Because Jesus is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and one day he's going to, sit on the throne and divide the sheep with the goats and so on. So actually, yeah, the guy did a good thing by coming to Jesus to say, will you arbitrate this dispute? Okay, the second response is this. What is this called? Triangulation. What is this? This is a business management principle that you might want to pay attention to. I have a problem with Robert, So what do? I go to Nancy. I go, Nancy, this guy, Robert, easy day. What is it? 2 against 1. If I have an issue with Robert, what am I supposed to do?
Go to him.
Go to Robert. Nancy has nothing to do with it. But people do this all the time. Rather than saying, Robert, you annoy me, you're a pest or something, you're a news, rather than taking it up with you, no, you get 2 against 1. 2 against 1. Right? And does that work? Yeah, well, it helps to disrupt the community. One of the reasons that Luke is writing Luke and Acts is to talk about what the ideal Christian community, what is a Christian community supposed to look like? A Christian community is supposed to be a place where you can't go to the Roman courts or the Jewish courts to settle your disputes. So you want to do conflict resolution at the beginning. When is a good time to solve the conflict? At the beginning, the middle, or 10 years later?
The beginning.
Nip it in the bud. Do it at the beginning. You don't let the thing, I go to Nancy, I run around, I get everybody all against me. No, that's destroying the community. For Luke, the integrity of the community is what's important here. You're supposed to take it up with the person. So what is this? This is a triangulation thing. So this brother, who should he talk to? His brother, right? Behold how good and pleasant it is for brothers to dwell in unity. Psalm 133. Right? When you break up the 2,000 years ago, what's the basic sociological unit? Family, clan, tribe. If you undermine the family, clan, and tribe, what is that? It's a worst case scenario. Right? For us, we're like, our family, we get together once every 10 years at a family reunion, and we're really close, that kind of thing. In the ancient Near East, you live in the village. Your cousins, everybody, they all live together. And you have to have like a gang of young men to protect your family, clan, and tribe business. So if you have dissension in the ranks, that breaks it all up. All right, Torah scholars. Do we have any Torah scholars here today? Yes, we do. I'm sure we do. Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 17 says this. How do you arbitrate an inheritance issue? You don't know?
You go to
I'm
the
shocked.
rabbi?
Here's the deal. Deuteronomy 27:17. Don't believe me? Go home and look it up. You should do that anyway. Deuteronomy 21:17 says, estates are divided this way. The elder brother gets a double portion of the estate. So I'll keep it easy. There's two brothers, the older brother and the younger brother. The father dies. Who inherits the estate? How is it divided? The elder brother gets a double portion, so he gets 2/3. The younger brother gets 1/3. Now, why would God come up with a stupid law like that? Shouldn't it be 50-50? It's not fair, right? Is that fair? Yes, it is. Why? In the ancient Near East, in Israel, the Torah, it's all about the land. You know about the Jubilee year? Every 7 times 7 is 49. So every 50th year is a Jubilee year. What does that mean? All the land titles go back to the original land-owning family, and all of your debts are wiped out. So in other words, it's a reset button for the economy. We have trade cycles, boom, bust cycles. Why is that? We have accumulation of debt, and then you have a boom, and then you have a bust. It goes like this, up and down. Well, this year of Jubilee thing deflates the bubble, right? And everyone goes back to their original. And land in the ancient Near East, agrarian society is power. So the original families keep the land, and if you have the land, you can make a living and so on. Okay? So the idea is to keep the family, clan, and tribes intact by giving a double portion to the elder, right? So this is a very important principle. Now, did the someone who stopped Jesus, did he know that? Ready? He's a Jew, right? It doesn't say the man is a Gentile and he's not familiar with Jewish law. No, we assume the guy's a Jew. Everybody knows this, right? It's sort of like, I didn't know. I didn't know I could, drink a 12-pack of malt liquor and drive my truck through the center of Rhinebeck. I had no idea. That's a law? Everybody knows that law, okay? So everybody knows this. So why is he trying to get Jesus to arbitrate on this dispute if it's clearly written in the law?
So he wins?
Because he doesn't like the law, that it's the way that it's written. Do we have problems today? Yeah, I don't like the Constitution because it binds my arbitrary, capricious freedom. So I'm going to sue this and sue this person. Well, no, if the law is clear, you can't make it any clearer than this. Ready? The older brother gets a double portion of the law. Deuteronomy 21:17. What does that mean? It means the older brother gets a double portion of the estate, period. It doesn't mean, you can arbitrate it or tweak it or change it, throw it away. What happens when you violate God's law? Ready for this? If you forget God. Let's make it the laws of nature. It's the same thing, right? If you violate the laws of nature, what does nature do? Nature has its own penalty built in. People say, why did God do this to me? Why did you do it to yourself? You violate the laws of nature and you're going to blame God? You ignore God and you live like an idiot and then bad things happen to you and then you blame God. Well, honestly, if you go by the laws of God and your life doesn't work out well, then you take it up with God. But usually, if you say, I don't need no stinking God, I don't want any laws, I'm going to do whatever I want. Well, here the law is clearly written, okay? But he doesn't like it. It's not fair. Right? So he tries to get Jesus triangulated into the dispute. Now suppose Jesus would have said, let's be fair. Let's divide it 50-50. What would that be? The critics of Jesus would say, you're an outlaw. You broke the Torah. Deuteronomy 21:17, which clearly says a double portion of the... In other words, Jesus can't win. It's one of these questions where no matter what he says, his enemies are going to twist it and try to nail him on it. See how this works? It's fascinating, right? So he says to him, take care. Why is that? Most people don't care about religious gobbledygook. What do we care? We care about stuff, right? You want to like get everybody in a bad mood? Talk about the budget. You want to get everyone in a bad mood? Talk about stuff, right? We get all hostile. We're going to defend my stuff. So Jesus says, take care. You're walking on landmines here, okay? Why is that? Be on guard against all kinds of greed. Okay, stop. The word greed is abused in our society. The ancient Greeks, the Bible itself teaches moderation in all things. What does that mean? That means you don't have to be St. Francis of Assisi in order to be a Christian. You're allowed to own things, no problem at all, right? Private property is a very important thing. It's how you take care of yourself and your family. You don't become a burden. Private property is a good thing. Greed would be, and is greed moderation? No, greed is way over on this side. Greed means like, I got to be on the hoarder show. That's my goal. I want to get as much stuff as possible. Me, I want to be a burden to my children when I go. I want to have so much stuff that they won't be able to get rid of it all. It's payback. That's what I want to do. Yeah. So greed is a problem, isn't it? Do we have a problem with greed, gluttony, the 7 deadly sins? Yeah, we have a problem with this stuff. So I don't know about you, it's kind of interesting. And what does Jesus say? Here's what he says. One's life does not consist of an abundance of possessions. What do you mean? This is the meaning of life. People always say, I always want to know what the meaning of life is. Well, the meaning of life is your life does not consist of an abundance of possessions. Do we believe this? No, we don't. We believe this. The one with the most toys wins. That's like the motto of most Americans. And what do we think? The more stuff you get, the happier you're going to be. Oh, if only I had stuff. If I had all the stuff, this is a wonderful thing, right? The more stuff you have, the happier you're going to be. Well, that's what commercialism says. That's what they say on TV, right? You watch the ads on TV. You can tell a lot by American culture by watching the ads. You ever watch the ads on TV? I can't help it, right? But what is it? The 10 or 12-year-old kid is always the genius in the family. The husband is always an idiot, right? And the kid says to the mother, because the mother is the decision maker in the family, the husband is just an idiot who doesn't know anything. In other words, it's an inversion of the way it should be, right? Children aren't supposed to be running the home, right? So you can tell a lot by watching advertising, right? Now, I like kids and everything, but you don't let the children run the asylum, right? You see how that works? Okay? So what does Jesus do then? I don't understand it. It's too complex, Jesus. It's too complex. So what does he do? He tells us a parable, right? Here's the parable that he tells you. Well, the land of a rich man produced abundantly. Stop. What produced?
The land of the rich man.
Notice that. Did this guy have anything to do with it? No. This parable is like, it's like digging right from the first line. The guy had nothing to do with it, right? It's like the land did it, right? The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. The earth is abundant, and this is a really good, it's a bumper crop year. And the land produced abundantly. The man had nothing to do with it, right? And what does the man do? He thinks to himself. Now stop, I might as well talk about this for a minute. How do you spell sin? S, what? I-N. This guy, he's like the world's most interesting individual according to himself.
Yeah.
The I word is used about 15 times in this little parable. I, me, myself. Let's talk about something interesting. Me, I'm the world's most fascinating human. What an amazing person I am. Let me pat myself on the back here. I'm going to go over here in the corner and talk to myself because I'm so wonderful. That's this guy. Talk about an ego, right? Is this offensive? For us, we would say, he's an American. No problem. He's an individualist. In the ancient Near East, 2,000 years ago, it's about what? Family, clan, tribe. It doesn't do any good to have all the money in the world if you're sitting there all by yourself without a family, clan, and tribe. Joy comes from being with your family, being with your friends, being with people. That's where joy comes from. It doesn't come from I. Here you are, a big pile of stuff, and it's just you alone to enjoy it. That's no fun, right? So he says to him, he thinks to himself, this is a soliloquy, right? Which is kind of an interesting New Testament thing. We're used to this because, Shakespeare's soliloquies and Hamlet and this sort of thing, and TV, like we always have the internal voice. This is a fairly rare thing in the ancient world, to have a soliloquy like this. So he's talking to himself. Why is he talking to himself? Well, because he doesn't have a rigorous prayer life. Prayer is communication with God. So instead, he's like, we'll cut that part out and I'll just talk about here because I'm really God. Okay? So he says to himself, what should I do? For I have no place to store my crops. All right, now stop. In the ancient Near East 2,000 years ago, what would you do? If you have an abundance of crops, you have a problem, right? Is that a problem? It's a problem. Bounty, okay? Surplus. What do? You go to your family, clan, and tribe, the village elders, your peers. Who is smarter? Many people or one person? Many people. And you consult your friends. You go, what should I do here? You know what I mean? You don't make it up yourself as you go along, but this guy doesn't have any friends, right? So he has to consult himself, okay? And he says, well, what should I do? I know what I'll do, right? I'm going to pull down my barns and build larger ones. And there, I'm going to store all my grain and all my goods. And I will say to my soul, notice he is I, right? Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. What is this called? Epicureanism, right? It's the ancient Greek philosophy. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. Party on, have a great time, live for the moment. Do we have a lot of that going on? Yeah, that's kind of like American culture, isn't it? Live for the moment. We don't care about the future. We don't care about the past. There's no history. There's no future. It's just all about now, right? So Epicureanism. We have a lot of this going around. But there's always a but in these stories, isn't it? Mm-hmm. What did God say? God said, you fool. Fantastic. Do you want God to call you a fool? No, not a good idea. What do you do to avoid being called you fool, thou fool? Well, a good place to start would be to get wisdom. Where is wisdom? Well, you could read the Old Testament. You could read Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon. King Solomon wrote three books in the Old Testament. Okay? So what's Proverbs? There are 31 Proverbs. What are they? They're like fortune cookie sayings. You like fortune cookies? Yeah, I like fortune cookies. That's where I get all my lottery numbers from. That's why I'm poor, right? Now you crack open the fortune cookie, it's like a little saying. That's sort of what Proverbs are. They're like these little pithy aphorisms. Are they good? Yeah. It's like having a bunch of wise old men, counsel. A council of wise men sitting around telling you, look, this is what life is. I messed up. I made bad decisions. This is what you should do to avoid it. Here's what wisdom is. Wisdom is this, right? So a fool is the opposite of what wisdom is in the Old Testament. What's the first proverb? The proverb says, the fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. Isn't that interesting? That's the first proverb. Who is this guy? There's no God, it's only me. Yes, the world's most interesting human. I, me. I don't know what to do with all my stuff. So he's assuming there is no God, and he's acting this way. Okay? So God says, you fool, this very night, your life, your psyche, the word psyche in Greek, your soul will be demanded of you. And these things that you are prepared, what will happen to them? Of course, we know the answer. Frank and Mike from American Pickers are going to come to your house. They're going to come to your house, and your idiot children are going to be standing there with your huge pile of stuff, and you're going to say, they're going to say, I'll give you $3 for this book. And your kids are going to go, oh no, I have to have more than that. That's what's going to happen to your stuff, right? Your stuff is going to be a problem and a burden, right? The things that you thought were so important, you're fighting, you're scrapping, you're stabbing people in the back, you're running people over in the parking lot, you're clawing to the top, you're getting all this stuff. Well, actually, nobody really wants your coffee mug from the Bahamas from 1971. I know it's a shock to you. It's a priceless gem, right? Most of the stuff that we think is very important, really nobody wants it. You know, the other day, the kids went to that camp up at Claremont, you know, the Livingston family. What a great thing. 7 generations in the same house. None of us are going to be in this position, right? And they have all this interesting stuff that is from, they have like a clock, a mantle clock of a hot air balloon. It must have been a French, you know, gold and everything. Beautiful clock, you know. And I'm looking at it going, this is a great thing. Back in the 18th century, this is probably a highly valued possession. It would be like the most valuable thing in their home. And here I am, Pastor Mark Donkey Boy, walking into the door, looking at this place, admiring it for free. I'm looking at this clock here. But at one time, this is a very important item for somebody. Most of the stuff we have is not museum quality, I hate to tell you. All the fighting and scrapping you've done, okay? Let me end with one quick little thing here to help understand this. We're reading the Bible, right? Why do I come to church? I come to church because I want to know what the heck is Jesus talking about here. That's why I come to church. So we have a 2,000-year gap between where we are now, it's 2018, and when Jesus lived, roughly 30 AD. So we have to go back 2,000 years. You have to go, okay, I'm going to read this text like I would if I lived in Rhinebeck right now. No, that's not how you read the text. You have to go, what were they doing 2,000 years ago? What is different then that's different now? What's the same now, it's the same back then? Okay? So one of the most important concepts that you can take away from this is this. This is a book. It's a sociology economics book. It's called Der Staat, The State by Franz Oppenheimer, 1915. I cut the book up and put it in a loose leaf because it's so important. Right? I've been working on this book since like 1980. Fantastic book. And what's the takeaway point? There are 2 means of allocating scarce resources. Right? What does that repeat after me? There are what? 2 means of allocating scarce. What does that mean? A scarce resource means the stuff that we have. Everything we have is scarce. So if you take all the world's stuff and throw it in a pile, you have a dilemma. How do you divide up the stuff? Well, there's only 2 ways of dividing up the pile of stuff. The first way is called the political means. What does that mean? It means one party gains and one party loses. One party gains and one party loses. What does that mean? It's a pie. You have a pie like this, a fixed pie, static, doesn't change, fixed pie. So what do? Hey, Robert, I want your iPhone. So I can persuade him, but that probably is not going to work. But if I take out a gun and go, this is a robbery, give me your phone. What happens? You give me the phone, I win, and he loses. For most of human history, we've used the political means of allocating scarce resources. Going back to like Mesopotamia, the Lugal, the great man, he gets all the stuff, and the soldiers below are paid a smaller portion. The Romans did it, Native Americans did it. All over the world, we live like it's a fixed pie and you divide it up. This story works if you understand Franz Oppenheimer and the idea that one party gains and one party loses. So they're trying to arguing about over the slice of the pie. So that works? Okay. Is there an alternative to this? Yeah. In the 18th century, the Enlightenment, Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations, 1770. Have I ever heard of this? Later on in the 19th century, people refined this thinking. Who is it? Leon Valois, Karl Menger, and William Stanley Jevons. They worked on this concept, and it's both parties gain in a voluntary transaction. So go back here for a second. There are 2 means of allocating scarce resources, right? What does that mean? The political means and the economic means. The state and society. Okay, you got this? So is there a way of having win-win? Yeah, win-win? Yeah, it's through peaceful, voluntary exchanges with people. In other words, it's a higher level of thinking. Rather than the old way, where win-lose, win-lose, win-lose. So what should this brother have done if he was using the win-win proposition? He would have said, my brother is bitter because he's only getting 1/3 and I'm getting 2/3. I should be gracious and magnanimous. I should come up with a win-win solution to the problem. In life, we all have conflicts, don't we? So what do? Rather than fighting for a win-lose thing, I'm right, you're wrong, I have a victory for me. Instead, you come up with a way so that both people win. Both people win. That way, you build the community. You build, what is it? Relationships are more important than stuff. That's what Jesus is saying here. You got that? So in life, you have to stop and go, wait a minute. The natural instinct is to get win-lose, to take the stuff that someone else has. That's a natural instinct. That's why we have commandments like, thou shalt not steal, right? And even if the law says the older brother gets 2/3, the younger gets 1/3, you should figure out a way so you don't destroy your relationship with your brother. It's not worth fighting over the estate. I don't care how big the estate. And usually, I've done funerals for a long time, and you wouldn't believe the horror stories I could tell you, right? During the visitation hours, the siblings are cleaning out the house. They can't even wait to bury the person. They fight over, they think it's a lot of money, like $3,000. So they clean out they sell a certificate of deposit and keep the money and all this kind of stuff. You're going to do this and destroy the relationship with your brother and sister for a couple $1,000s? That's not good, right? That's a problem. So what is the point here? You're a fool if you think the money is what life is all about, or the property or the possessions is what it's all about. Always fight, and you have to be creative. You have to take some extra energy to come up with a win-win solution. Both parties gain in a voluntary transaction. Build the community. Build the relationships. Because at the end of the day, that's really all you have, right? At your funeral, we're not gonna do a Viking funeral. We're not gonna bury you with all your stuff like King Tut, right? You come into the world naked, you go out the same way. Very, very important thing. So it's the relationships, not the money that counts. And what has Jesus said? He says, and the things you have prepared for yourself, what's going to happen to them? So it is with those who store up treasures from themselves, but are not rich toward God. How are we rich toward God? You love God by reading the law, right? You love God and you love your neighbor. It's a cross relationship, a dynamic tension. Very, very important stuff. Again, this is a parable of Jesus on the road. Amazing stuff. Amen.